I just went down to get my goodies, so I get a nice Rogue Invitational t-shirt.
It's your swag bag.
It's my swag bag. A hoodie.
Very nice.
I get some shoes.
Oh, nice.
Very nice. These are awesome.
Yeah, they are good.
I get a Yeti bag. That's cool.
Oh, nice.
Very nice.
What are we doing today, Lozzie?
We are going to the Stark Center to learn all about the history of strength with the incredible Jan Todd. We've been promising to go for a long time. Our flight isn't till later, so we're making the most of today, and we're going to go and see Jan.
Yay.
I'm
Time with Jan.
Some really cool, interesting stuff there that I can't wait to see. So, if you're a geeky nerd like me when it comes to strength, you'll enjoy this video. Jan is pretty awesome. So.
Jan is cool.
And just knows so much about the history of not just strongman, but strength.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm excited. Because I'm a geek.
Nerd. I'm going to pick on you in the Stark Center.
University of Texas Athletics Hall of Fame. This is a pretty epic building.
It's huge. You heart Texas, don't you?
I do, I like Texas. It's great. I fit right at home in Texas.
What do you like about Texas?
I like the food, I like the cost of the houses, I like the big roads, just like the people.
You like the cost of the houses?
Yeah, they're way more affordable than the houses around me. They have nice big houses. I deserve a nice big house. I'm a big man.
You're not built for England, are you?
No. And I can afford the nice big houses here. I can't afford the nice big houses in England. Have you enjoyed Texas?
I love Texas, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure the climate would agree with me.
Oh, well, it's been fine at the moment, but I guess the hot times of year where you would melt.
I wouldn't cope very
melt.
well. Although, Texas is much better equipped to deal with the heat than England is.
Yeah, they have
air conditioning.
We haven't really needed to use it though, have we?
No, one night it was a bit stuffy, wasn't it? It's been about it.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Texas.
There you go, big Texas fan. We are here. Just so you can get some sense of the place. Yeah. Wow.
Look at that.
Wow. And the building surrounding it is a university. It's all university.
That's amazing.
Yes. So the Stark Center is right behind those. That's sort of that wall right there.
Yeah.
It's that area right behind. So we've just enjoyed a fabulous lunch with Mrs. Jan Todd, and we are now here in the Stark Center.
It's been an ambition of mine to come here for a long time. I'm glad we've got the opportunity, Jan. Thank you for having us.
Oh, listen, we built this place for folks like you. I mean, Terry and I's desire for this was not only that we would sort of create an academic space where people could study strength and the history of physical fitness, but it's really also to remember how important the people are who are part of that community and who actually participate, because our desire in getting stronger and bigger and more fit is usually driven by the fact that we connect to some person. So for a lot of people I know, Blas, that was you.
Yes, absolutely.
And maybe for other people it was other folks, but the Stark Center is a place where what we've tried to do is celebrate that history and try to make sure that it gets preserved and passed on. So this actually began, as a lot of things did, with Terry, of course, and really after his lifting career here at the University of Texas, where we are, he wanted to write a doctoral dissertation about the history of weightlifting. So in the 60s, you would think that would be, you'd go to the library and there would be books and you would find that stuff. But nobody was buying those books in the 1960s at universities because weightlifting was still kind of a fringe sport. And an analogy I sometimes use is like, if I had a doctoral student right now who wanted to write a dissertation on, say, drag racing, big sport in America, where would you go to study that? And that's not that weightlifting was ever that, because it was in the Olympic Games, but in the wider public sphere, nobody really, there weren't a lot of muscle men running around in those days. So that was kind of where it started. And Terry began identifying a few people who had private collections, used those for his dissertations, and then in 1976, the man who had the largest collection, who was also a good friend of Terry's, passed away. And we decided that, by that time he and I were married, and we decided that it was important to save that. I had just begun my lifting career, and I could kind of get it that I had a hard time finding information on women who had lifted weights before me, and that those role models matter. So that was really the sort of genesis of this. And then since then, of course, it just has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. So this facility where we're standing opened in 2009. So need to understand that we were collecting for 30 years before we actually opened these doors, more than that actually. And when we moved in here, we moved in more than 3,000 boxes of materials.
3,000?
3,000 boxes of materials, not all directly related to strength, but also to broader physical fitness. We actually had more than that in terms of we had book carts filled with other books, all kinds of odd implements. And it has grown considerably since then. I think what we never really expected, that we would have a space like this, that's this large. We have over 27,000 square feet of space at the Stark Center. A lot of it, though, is stored behind doors. And so if we turn back and look at the big physical culture doors back here, behind those is actually the archival storage areas, where we'll go in a few minutes after we tour through some of the galleries. But what we've tried to do is just make sure it gets saved. If when I talk to my history students that I teach, because I'm a professor here at UT, I try to explain to them that history is actually about what gets saved.
Yeah.
And so it's really what do we know about ancient Greece? We know because there are some pottery that has survived with paintings on it. And we know that at Mount Olympus there are some statues. So the rest of it we kind of try to fill in the gaps and think we're making sense. But if we didn't have those fragments, we wouldn't know what was going to happen. And so because strength is so central to who we are as people, and it's so important to living fully active, healthy lives these days, even for aging people, like I would now have to throw in myself to think about.
No.
I don't want to say that, but it's true. I mean, I'm not who I was when I began lifting in the 70s. And but it's always so important to keep reminding ourselves that what we do, what you did as an athlete, isn't just about being that person, but it's also representing what is fundamentally a sort of basic right, which I would think is the right to be strong. So shifting gears. So when we had the chance in 2007, 2008 to begin planning what became the Stark Center, this institute that we're in right now, we never really expected to have this much space. And we were always thinking we would have a library where the students who come and study we have a PhD program in physical culture and sports studies. We have 10 students in that program right now. That these students who would come would be primarily coming to use a special library, like a rare books collection. But when we got the chance to have this space, it was much bigger than that, so we had to make some decisions. So we actually ended up having about 10,000 square feet of gallery space, and we're going to walk through some of that in a second. But it also left us with other kinds of questions about what to do. So we created one, quote, art gallery. We can actually walk in here if you want to. And there might be purists who would argue that it's not all art, but it's art to us. What we've actually done is these paintings and posters are on the wall, change from time to time. But a couple things I just wanted to show you that are particularly interesting. So this particular painting is a one-of-a-kind piece. This is a painting of Louis Durlacher, who was known as Professor Attila. So Professor Attila is the man who trained Eugen Sandow, and he was the guy who had a gym in Great Britain. And in the he actually had a gym before that in Belgium, and he actually met Sandow there first. But the important part of the story is that he ends up in the late 1800s in Great Britain, when Sandow comes over and he challenges Samson, and they have the big moment, and then Sandow emerges as this kind of phenomenon. So the leopard skin that he's wearing as his tunic was supposedly given to him by the prince in Great Britain. The club, of course, is symbolic of Hercules. And if you notice in the background of the painting, you can see there's a copy there of the Farnese of Hercules.
And one of the things that you'll see when you go around and you start looking at strength pictures is the Hercules image shows up over and over and over again. And the kettlebells that you can see in the painting there are actually, I'm sorry, on the left side of the painting, sorry, those kettlebells there are actually the kettlebells here on the floor.
Wow.
And those were, because Attila opened a gym and came to New York, opened the gym in New York City in 1893. And he then died in 1924-25. And when he passed away, the gym was empty for a little period of time. And then a man named Sig Klein came along, also a famous bodybuilder strongman. And Sig reopened the gym and ran it in New York City until the 1970s. And he preserved a lot of the things that were in Attila's gym, which was always more luxurious, like there were carpets on the floor, like Turkish carpets, things like that. Anyway, so these were sold by Sig Klein to a guy, believe it or not, in Texas. We have all the provenance on them. And so we were actually kind of glad to reconnect him with the painting. The Sandow bust belonged to Joe Weider, and we got it from him, along with a number of other things from Joe and Betty Weider when they closed their Woodland Hills offices. And Joe and Betty were also among the first donors to our work. Yeah. And they gave us $1 million back in 2002, and then they gave us a second $1 million when this opened, which went a long way toward allowing the university to think, well, maybe there is something to strength. Yeah. You know, people are going to buy in. And I should add that everything we do here is done with private money. Like my total budget from the university for this, like I teach, so I get paid as a faculty member to teach. That's my job. I get released one class to run the center. And then other than that, all the staff positions, all of the materials we have to buy, the conservations, like the cleaning of that painting, which we paid for, all of that, it's all done with money we raise. Okay. So it's all private. And so that's part of what I do these days is try to fundraise. So please donate. www.starkcenter.org. There's a button right on there. Push. We appreciate anything, no matter how small. So a lot of the pictures in the things on the walls in here, some of these are original posters, sorry. So a lot of the things on the walls in here are either art pieces or original posters. Most of what we have up right now relates to strength, but we've had other things in here as well. Madame Montaña was a Spanish strongwoman, and you can see we were looking for the idea about doing
similar to this.
The Tower of Power, yeah.
There's one of the images that was my inspiration for the Tower of Power. There's others you'll see as we wander around, because it was such a common feat of strength that was done in those early times. Yeah. Miss Kay was a woman who actually did what's called an iron jaw act. And so she would hold things in her teeth she would be up on a trapeze, hang upside down, and then hold things from her teeth. Kind of like this guy's doing here. You may have seen photographs of Bobby Pandor at some point. Bobby Pandor had this amazing physique working in the 1890s, and you can see how spectacular that would have been. Yeah. And the fact that it has the little light bulbs on the ladder, it looks kind of weird, like what was the deal? It's because electricity was new.
Yeah.
And so
they were just really enjoying it.
Yeah, it was sort of like, it was like a special thing. It was like having fireworks. Okay. It's like, oh, we have electricity in our app as we're doing this today. So anyway, this is an original oil painting of John Grimmick when he was quite young, and it was actually donated to us by a man who knew the painter. The painter was William McCloy, and this was painted of John. Of course, he was the first Mr. America, first and second Mr. America, and also an Olympic weightlifter. Worked for Bob Hoffman for years and years.
He looks great.
He had a great body. Yeah. Many people would say he's still their favorite Mr. America. This painting of a pro boxer named Gunboat Smith actually belonged to the university. It was in the Harry Ransom Center Art Museum, and they loaned it to us. This, however, was done by one of our good friends who was an art professor here at Texas. And this was a young man who was a student here at UT who was a power lifter in the early 1980s.
All right.
Bill Wyman, who painted him, could not remember the young man's name. And shortly after we opened the Stark Center, he had a photograph of him with his power belt on. And he actually referred to it as, just called it the power lifter. But when we were talking with him, when he'd agreed to donate it to the center, he said, I really called it to myself, my Texas Mona Lisa. And because it does have that kind of...
It doesn't look like oil. It almost looks like a software rendering.
He is a fabulous artist. Yeah. No, it's incredible.
It looks so modern, doesn't it?
It does, and it looks so fresh.
It's older than me. It's older than you, Lizzie.
Yeah, and anyway, Bill Wyman's still around. He actually lives in Round Rock, where we just were.
Oh, yeah.
Not Bill Wyman, but the young man whose name is McKibbins, something like that. We don't worry about that part. Don't look it up. It doesn't matter. But anyway, he showed up during an exhibit that we had. And it was really, and like he said, somebody told me there's a picture of me here in the museum, and he didn't know the painting existed.
Wow.
The woman I should mention in the bust, I don't know if you saw in the corner, is Betty Weeder. And that was done of her probably in the 1970s, and she's a little bit older, and there was a sort of photo campaign, advertising campaign for a while, where she had her hair worn up like that for quite a long way. She is really one of the most strikingly beautiful people you'd ever see in person. Yeah. She's just astonishing. So this is an oil painting of the guy you were just watching in the videos.
Oh, okay.
This is the Mighty Atom. He was a traveling strongman, and these things that are attached to this are actual horseshoes that he bent.
Oh, wow.
So this was painted by a guy named Alan Hermansader. It was entered in art competition in Allentown, Pennsylvania in 1972. And the painter made the frame, and then he put the things on it. And so we just thought it was kind of better to leave it all together.
Yeah,
so you could see it all. And he continued to work as a professional strongman into his 80s.
Yeah,
wow.
So he was 83 in this picture.
Yeah.
Wow.
So a lot of people wander in here because it's Austin, and then they look across and they think it's Willie Nelson.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Soon you'll have a picture of 83-year-old Mark Felix up on the wall.
Still looking how he does that.
Yeah.
This is actually just a fun thing. This was a gift I gave Terry in the 80s for one of his birthdays. And I have a girlfriend who's really become very famous, an artist named Julie Speed. And I just said to Julie, just do something for me that's like a strongman, and I don't care what else it has, but it needs to have a mastiff in it. Because it was like I wanted a strongman and a mastiff, and so she came up with this, which...
That's great.
And now her stuff, she has like shows in New York, and her stuff looks very different, but it's wonderful. This was from Joe Weider's office. We have a lot of sculptural pieces came from Joe's corporate offices. And then this wall are pretty much all original strongman posters that we've acquired. Rui Cunha was, of course, Spanish, the Apollo Trio. And a lot of the strongman acts in those days, they didn't just lift weights. They lifted each other. Yeah. They did other kinds of things. This guy, Heros was working more in the 1920s. And we actually have some other photographs of him. He always reminds me of that actor. There's a... Oh crap!
Who does he look like, Lizzie?
It's an Irish actor who, do you remember Colin? Like Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell. Oh yeah.
Colin Farrell. But his act, you can see, it was after World War II, and so the use of the military stuff and the missiles and things that would have been used in World War I, or the bombs, I guess I should say, shows up. This is an original oil of Bernard McFadden that Johnny Lee McFadden's son gave to me and to Terry. It hung for a while in the Smithsonian, and they decided to give it back to the family. And you can kind of see what he really looked like there. This of course was Betty Weeder in her heydays as a model for the Weeder Enterprises. And I have to admit that when that arrived, because that also came out from Joe and Betty Weeder, when that arrived, I had some male grad students, so we were trying to decide where to put things. And they immediately requested that it go in their offices, which they did, which we allowed for a little bit. And it was very popular.
She looks great.
Well, she did, and this thing. There's always stories about her and Arnold, because the story was that her waist was the same size as Arnold's upper arm. And she swears that's true.
Huh?
And so And when you meet her in person, you actually can see that her proportions, she still looks fabulous even at her age now, but her proportions were such that you could actually believe, she's one of those women who's just so blessed. Some people ask us about the big statue when they enter the Stark Center. So it is a 10'6" copy of the original Farnese of Hercules, which is at the museum in Naples, Italy. The original's there. It's the only one that is the actual size of the original Farnese of Hercules in North America. And as far as we know, there's only one other in the world that is the same actual size. The exhibit behind me here is actually called He Liked Big Things. And it's actually about Terry. We put it up after he passed away. The barbell on the floor there is the one that Mark Henry used to train for the first Arnold.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Terry had it made. It was made in Moon, Texas. The wheels are from an old oil machinery. It weighs, I think, about 330. Laws, you can try to pick it up if you want to.
I'll leave it on the floor today.
But you can see it's a fat bar.
Yeah.
And it has a great look, but it's the same size as the original Pond's wheel.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I can actually still pick it up at that height, so I knew you would not fail.
Yeah, she's not here to show you up. That's
No,
all.
not today. So,
Some of this stuff's too nice to lift.
No, I know, yeah.
it's kind of done, yeah. And these are pictures of Terry at different times. He played tennis, as a kid. That's him on the tennis team when he was really young. And that's not him on the cover of Inside Powerlifting. That's actually Doug Young. But that was taken right after we got married. And there's one of our earliest mastiffs. That was Pooh Bear. And that was me. I was probably 21 in that picture. Because that was how old I was when we got married.
Wow.
Yes,
Very
I
young.
was just a kid.
You were.
Actually still a student at the time. So
Andre the Giant here as well.
yeah, Andre was a good friend to us. Terry wrote about him for Sports Illustrated and traveled with him for about 3 weeks.
I watched some of the documentaries of Andre and I've seen Terry in them.
Yeah. And he actually he spoke at Andre's funeral. He sort of did he was one of the people asked to speak at that. And there he is with Thor, and that was when we were making the full Sturker movie.
Was that in Iceland?
Yeah, it's in Iceland. Yeah, we were actually where the Husafell stone is. We were sitting outside on the barn, freezing our ass off. And,
That's cool.
so let's come this way. I'm always looking online for things, and it's really rare to find an art piece that's about a woman holding a barbell. Yeah. And so this came up at an auction site, and I was like, well, that's really interesting. And so I bought it, and then I was lucky to get it on the auction. And when I got it home, I was looking at it, and I thought, And I saw when it was made, because it was done in 1979. And then I noticed that there was this dog down here, and the woman is kind of like a giant in the landscape. So the dog doesn't look to scale, but, the proportions are all interesting. But 79, of course, is when women's lifting is all getting started. And I was looking at it, and of course, I really wish I'd had that bust line at some point in my life. I've never had that, but it made me wonder what inspires an artist in New York to start thinking about doing women with barbells. Yeah. But it was because I think that's when powerlifting starts, and all of a sudden there's all this conversation, and I don't think it's just me. But so I looked him up. We found him. We started having conversations. He's now in his 80s. And all of the paintings at the back, which is this series of wonderful, artistic, athletic women, including other pictures of women with barbells, were done by Igor Galanin, is the artist's name, who's still alive and works in New York. He's 84 now. And so he loaned us these images. But painting women doing sports at all is rare.
Yeah.
And, we have lots of pictures of boxers. How many pictures do you have of women boxers that are paintings? Nobody does that. And so we have both his circus paintings, and also, because they're also athletic women, and then the series of the women skaters, the boxers, and the strong women that he did back there. And there's Herc, who's there. This is a little exhibit about Lutcher Stark, after whom the center's named. So Kyle has been working on this, and this is kind of fun.
This looks good.
Yeah. So Jim Larmer, they closed the offices up. And so they sent us a 7x7x7 cube full of stuff. And so what we've actually gotten from them is not only Jim's archives, but other kinds of things. The jacket looks great, by the way. Good job on that. Well, no, this is all Kyle. This is what Kyle does. He's the decorator, designer, genius who does all this stuff for us. And but these are the original posters that used to hang in Jim's office up in Worthington Hills. And you might want to come back and you can do some of this quicker.
I'll look through.
And but lots of interesting pieces related to Arnold. And this oil painting was done by Thomas Beecham, who is a California artist who also painted all the other major Mr. Olympias that Joe liked. Well, yeah, there were some of the later ones he didn't get to, and of course Lou was never Mr. Olympia, but they were friends. Yeah. These big oils used to hang in his office in Woodland Hills, and there's others of them back around the other office complex. And then you can see on these walls, this is other stuff that used to hang in the main Arnold Sports Festival offices in Columbus, Ohio. These are the seats. When we first started the show, the bodybuilding and the Saturday night finale was done at what's called Veterans Memorial Stadium, which is the old theater across the street. And Arnold and Jim always sat in the same two chairs at the end of the front row. And that's
those are the seats. Amazing. Someone saved the seats.
Yeah, and they were in Jim's office, and so they got shipped down to us as well. In this room, sort of because we got the Arnold stuff and we were sort of celebrating Strongman, we thought we should put up other Strongman posters we had in the back, just as another sort of special exhibit. So these are other originals, and I was going to show you, Liz. Come over here. It's much rarer to find posters of women, but this is really quite wonderful. This is the strongest women in the world.
Oh, wow.
And from 1900, 1901. And this is, of course, in French. Notice that a lot of them are doing wrestling, because wrestling for women...
Their body weight.
60 kilos, yeah. She's Belgian. She's 20 years old, 60 kilos. Right. 32, 70 kilos. And so wrestling and like Katie Sanduina wrestled in the beginning. Okay. Most of the early strong women did some wrestling in their routines. This is the earlier version of Trey. This is the Texas strongman, Scott Jackson, who was really legitimately strong. And we have all of his collection here, including his harness. I'll show you his pulling harness. Some of these are earlier things. Anyway, you can kind of explore it. Yeah. There's some original Katie Sanduina's posters here at the center. And then in here, this room is all about the great weightlifter Tommy Kono. Okay. Tommy Kono was America's most successful weightlifter. He won gold medals in the 52 and 56 Olympic Games. And then he also won a silver medal in the 1960th Olympic Games. He was also a great bodybuilder, and he actually was, as you can see here, he was as famous in some ways for his physique as he was for his Olympic championships. He learned to lift weights in an internment camp during World War II. Oh, yeah. As a Japanese American, he and his family were gathered up and put essentially in prison camp in California. And this is Tula Lake, which is where he was. That actually is not in the prison camp, but that's his gym that he built when he got out, when he was a teenager, where he sort of started learning to lift. But we have all of Tommy's collection here, and it's more than 50 boxes of archival materials.
Wow.
Related to him. It includes his training logs, and you can see some of his medals are hanging there, where there's other trophies in the back.
That's incredible that you have all this.
Well, it has to be saved.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because he's a great story.
Yeah.
There was on Google, they make the little cartoon things like the Google for the day. Yeah. So last year there was a Tommy Kono Google Doodle.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Cool. Which kind of shows how much he matters.
Yeah.
These photographs in here are primarily part of the show from New York City from a guy named Stephen Green Armitage, who shot for SI. There might be a picture of Terry and Jan in Nova Scotia at the bottom there.
Ooh.
On our farm.
Get a close up of this one.
And Stephen became, when Terry was working for SI, he was the photographer who Terry normally requested. He's a very good friend. And you can, so there's Mark, maybe a picture of Mark. That's probably from around 92 or so, when he's getting ready to go to the Olympic Games. And of course, Vasily Alexiev up above.
Yeah. Very fresh-faced looking Mark.
Very fresh-faced, chubby cheeks, Mark.
Yeah. I didn't want to say, but yeah.
That's okay, I can say that.
Yeah.
I can get away with that. And anyway, Stephen he's pretty much retired now, but he did a lot of work also for Life magazine and other big photo magazines. So one of the things about us is we're also the official repository and archive for the University of Texas Sports. And so we don't have as much of that out right now, but we're kind of shifting things. And you can see we have a gallery closed off here. But that's a statue, by the way, of Ricky Williams, famous football player from UT who won the Heisman. The rest of this is based on football collections that we have from different famous coaches, like Darryl Royal and Matt Brown and some of the folks who are most important to the history of UT sport. And one of the nice things about getting somebody's papers, as we call it, is like with the end of that wall down there actually shows like Matt Brown's plans for defense and offense. Like it's actually, like this is how the play is gonna work. And you can see that real stuff that makes things happen. So as we come down,
Wow, it really is big, isn't it?
yeah, and we're not done.
No.
So this room is about golf.
Okay.
And I won't go into a lot of detail here, except that UT has a terrific golf heritage. And you can come back. That photograph of the guy who looks almost naked with all the electrodes on his body,
Oh, yeah.
that's the famous golfer Tom Kite, who's a Texas ex. And Terry helped to start the first biomechanical study ever done on the golf swing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when we were at Auburn at the Strength Research Center.
That's cool.
And Tom agreed to do that. And so he's actually a lovely, lovely man and actually a pretty good friend. And so we have his collections here, which I'll show you in the back. There are two galleries celebrating bodybuilding, and I'll let you do this, Liz, at your leisure in a little bit,
Okay.
because I'm going to kind of move you through quick.
Yeah.
Through here. But you can see this room has much more in it about Joe and Betty Reeder and their particular stories. And then the other side is some of the rest of the history of bodybuilding stuff, including the early people. This, of course, was a bust of Joe behind you there that used to be in his offices.
It's a famous image, isn't it?
Famous image. And a controversial image in some ways, because a lot of people would have an argument about whether that was actually all Joe.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
But when I was talking about how pretty she was,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, she's probably 50 years old in that photograph.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and just gorgeous. And you can also see here, Liz, for those on your site who are mainly interested in the female body, that waist was pretty strange.
Yeah, that's
Strangely small.
That is small, yeah.
Yeah.
There's another one there.
Yeah, and I mean, truth is that back in the early days, people didn't have Photoshop, but they had other ways of
Manipulating things.
manipulating negatives, what they called overpainting and so forth. But Betty had an unusually lucky genetic dispensation. So the big images on the walls here are what we call the wall of icons, and these are people. This used to hang out in the main lobby. We just moved it back here. Because we're gonna keep continuing it on down with some new additions. And basically, these are pioneering figures in the history of physical culture who made a big difference. So it's an idiosyncratic Todd list. Like I have Katie Sanduina in here. Others might not have put her there, but I think she was symbolically really important for women in that earlier time. But it includes people like Joe Weider, Bob Hoffman, of course, from New York. Here is John Grimmick, the real John Grimmick. Jack LaLanne, who had the first and most successful exercise television show. And then further down, Kenneth Cooper, who was the founder of aerobics and jogging and all of that. So I'll let you explore a little bit of this more in a bit. John Davis, of course, who was really important as a sort of symbolic breakthrough person in terms of African American sports and acceptance. And of course, he was also just strong as hell. This room is about Muscle Beach. Most of the images in this room came from the collection of Pudgy Stockton, who was a good friend of mine and Terry's. And so Pudgy made sure that all of her photographs, scrapbooks, materials came to us when she passed away. And we were really delighted to do that. The guy at the end may not look familiar to some people, but that's Armin Tanny. Armin Tanny had the first successful chain of gyms in America that were called Tanny gyms. He was like before Gold's and all those places, there were Tanny gyms, and then and he was also connected to Muscle Beach and that scene there. This is a room that has both images and artifacts related to strong men and strong women. So I have to say that we have lots and lots of things when we go through the Kazmaier doors, as we call it, with the appropriately placed handle, I'd have to say.
Christ.
And Bill has been here many times and laughed at that.
Oh, I bet he enjoys that, yeah.
And I have to also say that Terry had a lot to do with the handle placement.
I bet he did. Yeah.
But so we were always primarily book and paper collectors, but of course, now that we have all this extra space for exhibits, it's sort of hard not to try to acquire things when we can.
Yeah.
So just real quickly in the case. So the first really famous strong woman was the woman up here with the cannon behind her on the wall. That's Minerva, who I've written about twice. And anybody wants to look up about her, she can find her in the Iron Game History online files. But this is actually the belt that she was given when she did the greatest lift ever made by a woman to this day.
Wow.
And supposedly lifted more than 3,000 pounds in a back lift at the Bijou Theater.
Loz loves a backlift, don't you, Lozzie?
Well, so does Jan.
So does Jan. Oh my goodness.
No, I used to do backflips when I gave my,
Did you?
When I used to go to the fairs and do exhibitions, I would finish with a backlift of children.
I think a backlift of the Arnolds would look good.
I have argued for it for years. We have a backlift machine.
Cool.
The belt and the loving cup belong to her. The singlet, or the vest, as you might call it in Scotland or Ireland, belonged to Jack Shanks, the first guy to lift the Denny stones.
We know Jack.
And Jack, as we do. And Jack gave us that. I mean, actually, Stevie sent me that last year, along with Jack's belt, so it could be saved here at the museum.
That's nice.
The one in front, of course, is the Denny belt that I just acquired, the one that's been missing for more than 100 years. And I've written a blog about this.
Okay.
And it's kind of a long, interesting story because it's really about the sadness of the end of Denny's life when he was having to sort of use his medals for coin, to cover things. This is the first, and we think only surviving copy of how Milo Barbell started building barbells in the early 19th century. That's from about 1903. And it was a shot-loaded barbell.
Can you see in the side?
Yeah.
You can see the grit still inside it. In those years, people believed that shot was better than plates because nobody was making plates yet, but they loved shot-loaded barbells because you could make tiny incremental changes in weight. And so I'll show you in the back when they transitioned, they actually did more of that. This barbell belonged to Sid Klein. It actually only weighs 160 pounds. It looks like a lot more than that.
Yeah.
But it was from his gym in New York, which also means it probably was owned by Professor Attila. That particular barbell belonged to Warren Lincoln Travis, the famous American strongman.
Look at that.
And Lozzie, see if you can, I'm calling you Lozzie.
It's catching. Even the strongmen call him Lozzie. It's okay.
So, put your,
That's nasty.
isn't it?
Go on, Lozzie.
You can't get your hand in properly.
No.
2 hands.
Look.
No. So he would stand it up on one end, and then he would rock it over and do things with it. And he would challenge people to clean it, But the problem with it, of course, is that it's so narrow. And supposedly, his
Brian
hand...
Shaw wouldn't like this.
No, and, Thor's been here 3 or 4 times. And we've talked, and there's no way he can pick it up because you can't get your hand in.
There you go. I can. I'm just not strong enough.
Yeah. Well, even my hands, but I have big hands. But my hand falls over. I'm over on this.
Right.
Yeah, on that side. And it's not all on. So he must have had, probably long, slender hands. But that's what the guys did. They built things that were very specific to them.
Yeah.
And so then if you're going to have a challenge like come in off the floor,
You've got to know the little
you've
tricks.
got to know the little tricks. So
Yeah.
there's some pictures of women over on this side other than Minerva.
Hold on, you've challenged him now. There we go.
And I was going to call your attention. There's a couple pictures of Jill Mills. There's another weird-looking girl in the middle there.
Let's look at the weird girl. Jan was strong.
I know.
First lady to lift the Denny stones.
Yeah, that was actually during training for the stunts. And that's actually me up the top with Alexia.
Oh, wow.
And so...
Great hair, Jan.
I know, very much like Liz's hair, almost.
Wow. Yeah.
My hair was long for a long time. And it just got to be too much. So anyway, and then other real quick things. This barbell belonged to Bob Peoples, who was one of the pioneers of powerlifting before there was powerlifting, who deadlifted like 728 or something like that way back in the 1940s. And he's the man in the middle of the photograph above it. And then, he was a very poor farmer.
Looks a bit like
He didn't have much
Pudzianowski from
money,
here.
And so he would use rocks and things.
Oh.
And then there's a few photographs down there. Kyle and I are working on a redo of some of the Strongman pictures and a big expansion.
Oh, nice.
This was done back in '09, and we haven't really changed those in quite a while.
Yeah.
But come this way. Oh, quick
Get a
story.
good view of Kaz.
Oh, yeah. So I can share one other quick thing. So this is one of the Basque lifting stones, like when we made the movie in northern Spain.
Yeah.
The Lontadores. So there's a handle in the back.
Yeah.
There's two.
Yeah, there's two. Yeah, where are the handles on this one?
They're on the back side.
Backside low, yeah.
Yeah, right on the
Yeah,
bottom.
down there. Yeah, there's hand grips
And
back there.
This one is designed to flip up onto the shoulder.
Yeah, I see
Every
the film.
single
It's
one of
amazing.
them, though, is made for the man. In other words, it's not like
designed.
They're
it's-
custom made.
They're custom made, and they end up using they'll change the weights on their stones, sort of like you guys do with rocks.
Yeah.
And they do the same thing. They'll drill it out. They'll add weight to it. And so, but this one was actually used by a guy who set records with it. So it weighs 160, whatever that is, 3 kilos. And
Wow.
you know what the record is in this now for them? So they're different shapes, but this is the kind of traditional shape where they lift the most because it's counterbalanced like
Yeah.
it is. I think it's about 733
What?
to one shoulder.
Pounds.
Yes.
Jesus.
Yeah, 733. And it's
325 kilos?
yeah, it's held by a guy named the great Pararenia's son. I forget his first name. But it's
Amazing.
just astonishing what he can do.
Sorry, viewers, but
Here we go.
no public
Yanking
access.
Kaz.
So Jan's had to go and teach class.
She's done teaching, and we're just having a little look around. It's really nice of Jan to take us around and show us everything. We're just having an extra look at some of the things we didn't have enough time to really go through. But I was just looking at Lamar Gant here.
His arms, man.
Yeah. Deadlifted like 700 pounds, weighing 130 pounds.
Yeah.
But obviously perfect leverage for deadlifting.
Doug Young.
There you go, that's proper distance.
No, it's just what we're used to seeing. Powerlifters there. I stand by this from the right
think it's,
angle. It looks a bit
Long
like
lost
Puig.
relative of Pudzianowski.
Yeah, possibly.
Some of the earlier Arnold Classic.
Shore Classic. Did you accidentally say Shore Invitational this weekend?
No.
When you were on commentary?
I don't know. I forget what I say. I told you I've got people talking in my ear and I'm trying to watch something and everything else is going on. I say all sorts of stuff.
Rich Williams. Carrying the anvil by the horn.
Dean. Arm wrestler Cleve Dean.
Oh, first ever. Oh no. That's not
Cleve
World's
Dean.
Strongest Man there, is it? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah.
He competed at World's Strongest. I don't think it was the first World's Strongest Man. No, it was the second one.
Yeah.
But he was a hell of an arm wrestler.
Here's Bill.
Kaz.
Oh look, here's an authority. Bill Kazmaier was so dominant that he was barred for a time because the TV people didn't want the same man to win every year. There we go. It's in the museum, so that is the official.
Yeah.
There have been theories, haven't there?
It's a shame because Bill was awesome.
So Dronas considered by most authorities to be the strongest man overall in history. Oh look, this is out of date. He won the Arnold Strongman Classic 6 times. Jan did say they haven't updated this bit since 2009.
Yeah.
So, Derek, Mark Henry and Zadrunas. Oh, Marius. If he was going to have a picture up here, he wouldn't want it of him at the Arnold's, would he? Failing, looks through the dumbbell. So, Brian.
What's going on with this lifting?
Some sort of circus act. Here we go.
That's pretty insane.
That could be us.
That could be us, but you don't lift.
No, that could be me, you idiot. I'm not going to be down there.
She clearly trains.
She clearly trains. Well, I don't need to train to stand there and go ta-da. As long as we don't have to switch roles.
Misha? Clive?
Yes. Misha for Clive.
Vasil Alexei, one of the greatest Olympic lifters.
Where's Paul? There he is. There he is. Boom. Famous weightlifter in the world, 1950s. There we go. There he is again. There we go. Has your geeky strongman appetite been fulfilled?
I tried to lift this earlier. You can't even fit your hands inside it.
I can.
Well, you can.
But
you can't
what's the
lift
point?
it.
No.
But yeah, it's been cool. Just seeing some of the stuff.
Yeah.
Back behind those doors where you guys aren't allowed, there is so much cool stuff.
You can't see that.
No, but just like if
Yeah,
you're
no, there is, honestly.
the amount of different grip type things, barbells, just various different kind of
The
strength
archives.
memorabilia. The archives are ridiculous.
Every single word that's ever been written on strength is in there. Every single issue of every magazine,
all the
every
magazines, photos, just
It's all
everything that's been
archived.
written. It's
Incredible.
I didn't think it was possible to see that much stuff of strength.
No, in one place.
Yeah,
It's incredible.
It really is. It's been really cool to come and see.
Like, I always respected Jan Todd, but you have to respect her a bit more when you see the work
effort that's
and
been
effort
put into
that's
this
gone
place.
into all of this. Yeah.
Because no one else is kind of nowhere else
No
in the
one
world
has a
it.
collection like this. There's nothing like this anywhere else.
It's truly
I don't believe it.
unbelievable. If you get a chance to come to Texas and
Austin,
you're into
Texas.
strength, definitely get yourself down to the Stark Center.